And for more, let's turn now to Volker. He is a former U.S. ambassador to NATO and a former U.S. special representative to Ukraine. He's currently a distinguished fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. Mr. Volker, welcome to the day. It's good to see you. The grain deal was the first and so far only major diplomatic success in the war, but Turkey and the UN see it as a first step towards a negotiated solution to the entire conflict. Ukraine says we'll only talk if Russia withdraws. How do you see it?
Well, I think that's exactly right. Putin has given no indication that he intends to withdraw from Ukrainian territory. It is true that his forces have had a hard time advancing lately and even taken some hits against ammunition depots and things. So there may be some desire for Putin to negotiate and, get agreement to keep what he's taken. But I really don't believe that Ukraine will do that. I also think that the grain deal is very important, as your report indicates, but it was also only possible after Ukraine retook Snake Island and created a safe corridor where they could pass their ships to the west of the island and out to the mouth of the Black Sea. So there is a military component to that, which basically forced Russia to recognize that Ukraine could do it.
I want to look at that military component because yesterday I spoke to the former Ukrainian ambassador to Austria. Let's listen to some of what he told us and then keep talking.
The real chance for the lasting peace would be the moment when we start pushing Putin back from our territory. That would be the moment when Putin feels he's losing this war. And that would be the moment when he decides to really give diplomacy a chance.
Mr. Volker, do you believe military force is the only thing that will push Russia to the negotiating table?
Well, it's the minimum. I think he's absolutely right that Putin won't even consider negotiating anything serious unless there is military force pushed back against him and their forces are losing. But even then, what Putin will try to achieve is gaining more territory in Ukraine than he had before. He'll want to claim some conquest, some victory. And Ukrainians will not do that. They will not agree to see part of their territory taken away by Russia, just as any other country, whether it's Germany or the United States, would ever agree to just have our territory conquered.
Does Ukraine, though, currently have enough military force to achieve any of that, to either force Putin to the negotiating table or to push Russia out of its sovereign territory?
Yeah, I'd say the tide is turning. It's not quite there yet. Russia is no longer able to advance militarily. They can lob dumb bombs. They don't have a lot of guided munitions anymore, but they're not able to take even the rest of Donbass, let alone advance further elsewhere into Ukraine. Ukraine, meanwhile, is making very good use of the precision-guided munitions and artillery that the U.S. has provided, along with others. And this is taking out Russian ammunition depots, fuel storage, food storage, rail lines, bridges. And this is making it very, very difficult for the Russians to supply their forces. And once those forces are stranded out there in the field, the Russians are going to have to consider, do they need to pull them back, or else they will be unable to really hold the positions that they're in.
You say the tides are turning. There has been lots of speculation about the recent strikes on Crimea. Leadership in Kiev remains coy. Did Ukraine blow up the Saki airfield?
Well, Ukraine has not confirmed that. I don't think any of us sitting here can say with certainty. But I think what we should say, and say very clearly, is that attacks on Russian forces in Crimea are no different than attacks on Russian forces elsewhere in Ukraine. Whether they're outside of Kyiv or whether in the Donbass, all of our countries recognize Crimea as part of Ukraine, and the Russian forces have no business being there.
But Kyiv has never struck that far into Russian-held territory, so this is quite remarkable, actually, if it was a Kyiv-authorized mission, I would say. The U.S., let's talk about that, is playing a key role in getting weapons donated by allies to Ukraine. You know NATO quite well. Why isn't the alliance doing that?
Well, there are several reasons. Early on, I think several countries in NATO were afraid of arming Ukraine because it would just lead to conflict with Russia, not recognizing that Russia was hell-bent on a conflict anyway. So it is just a matter of helping Ukrainians survive. Another reason is that many NATO countries have not invested in their own armed forces over many, many years. And so they have very little to give. And then a final reason is because they have very little to give. They're trying to harbor some national defense forces of their own just in case, because NATO's job is also to defend NATO country territory, even though we would like to help Ukraine.
Now, this war doesn't look like there will be an outcome, a solution, or that it will be decided in the battlefield in the foreseeable future. How long are the United States going to remain as resolute as they are in their support for Ukraine?
Well, I can only quote what Secretary Blinken and U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, have said repeatedly, which is we're going to help Ukraine as long as it takes. Now, I hope that it doesn't take a very long time, but what we're seeing now is Ukraine likely able to take back some of the territory in Kherson before the winter sets in. It'll be a very tough winter for the Russian forces. And then I think we'll see more fighting again next year. I hope that the Ukrainians are able to use that time to regroup and rebuild. But doing that means getting the economy on a stronger footing. And that's both the power supplies that UN Secretary General Guterres was talking about, getting the port open, as we've been talking about, and also trying to make sure that there is a revival of a basic economy in Ukraine beyond just the microeconomy.
For the U.S. public, though, this is a conflict that is very far away. How long can the cusp be justified to a public worried about inflation, their own cost of living, and the political future of their country?
Yeah, it is an issue here. You hear it on the far left and you hear it on the far right, that they don't think we should be spending all this much money, or for how long. They question, should we be spending this amount of money? But overall, the majority of the population here is very supportive of Ukraine. This is one of the few clear-cut cases of outright aggression from basically an evil regime, the Putin regime, that is deliberately targeting civilians, committing war crimes, raping women, shelling maternity hospitals. So there's tremendous support in the U.S. public for supporting Ukraine. And it's actually been the public and the Congress that has pushed, and the administration has been slower and reactive in dealing with that.
But, you know, we know what side we're on, of course, but discontent is brewing here and there. Here in Germany, a senior politician just demanded that the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline be opened. He was quickly shot down, but those voices are there. Where does the Western unity of purpose stand?
Well, I'd say it's pretty good right now. The fact that there are voices out there means that we are democracies and anyone with a point of view can express it. But the vast majority of people recognize the stakes for Europe and Europe's security in Russia being defeated, the kind of imperialism and ideology that Putin represents now, trying to exterminate a whole people. That's exactly the same kind of ideology that brought us World War II. And so if we want to avoid a wider war and something that's more dangerous for all of us, it's important that Putin be stopped in Ukraine.
Kurt Volker, Distinguished Fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.